Jason Molenbelt here with another one-take tutorial from Diomedes Industries. And we're going to be talking a little bit about today how I do my cutouts, how I cut out leather. So let me show you guys what, sort of through this process, what it sort of looks like. I've got a fairly large table here now that I just got and I'm pretty excited about. But it's 5 foot by 3 foot, just 3/4 inch oak plywood is on that. And so I start with a really big roll. In fact, let me kind of back up and show you guys here. I start with a really big roll. That's a side of leather that I've been cutting off for some time. And what I do is I lay out my pattern trying to maximize that piece of leather at all times. Again, I say this a lot, but you know, at the end of the day, this was a living item, living animal, and I don't want to misuse anything from any living animal. So what I will do is lay out on that big piece of leather all of my cuts that I need to make. And so I've got various patterns. This one's our Reaper pattern. And I know that that's backwards. That's our Reaper pattern. And I lay that out, leaving room for the welts that I cut from the outside of these. And then, once I'm done with laying it out, I will cut out that big piece and end up with, this has about 3 or 4 sheaths on this piece here. It's kind of oddly shaped. I've been taking stuff off of it. And then I'll use a variety of knives. The 2 knives that I would recommend taking a look at is a form of a head knife. This is a very small head knife from Joshua Fields, and what they call a clicker knife. Again, from Joshua Fields. Now, the head knife normally is quite a bit bigger. This is a 4-inch head knife, Marlin 128, which the person who used to make this has long since passed away. But you can find these in various different sizes. And so, once you have it cut out and you can move it around, that's what I want to advise. Is you got this smaller piece and you can move it around. You can start with your whatever knife you're going to use. The advantage of a head knife is, as you can see here, is it allows for push cuts. I can push into that cut and then finish cutting this out. Okay? So instead of a pull cut, like I'm going to change to right now, you have a push cut. Well, what's the difference? Some people prefer one over the other, but let me show you why they're both available. A pull cut means that as you're cutting, you're trying to look where your blade already is. So you can imagine this layout line has been scratch-alled in, and I'm trying to pull this knife, and I can't, I'm in my own way. I can't see where I need to cut because the blade, if I'm looking over top, so you end up kind of moving your head and you're kind of looking in from the side, and it can be a pain in the butt. The other part of it is, it tends to give you, as you use your arm a lot, tennis elbow. It just does. So the head knife can be used as a push cut. It can also be used as a rolling cut. So let me show you. Here's a push cut. So now where I'm cutting toward is in front of the blade, and I can see what I'm doing. So I just push through that cut. Because it's round, I can roll this knife as well. And that's the advantage of these bigger head knives. A lot of rolling. That's going to be well over 4 inches of rolling. Let me look. Almost 6 inches of rolling. This little guy, which I prefer, has a little bit, but look how this works. Boom. It works awesome as a trim type knife. Let me show you again as I'm cutting through this. Man shot, yeah. This is 8-ounce leather. It's fairly stout. I've just sharpened these blades, so you can tell how easily they're cutting. Here's a push, not a roll. Here's a roll. No idea what that's actually called. I call it a rolling cut. I try to set these up with as little waste as possible. So there's now I've cut out 2 of these different sized fronts on the Reaper, and let me show you how I do my my welt cuts. So I'm going to cut this in half so I can move around the one that I ultimately want to cut out. And I'm going to use this area around, that's why I've left it there, for my welt. So what I need to do is cut this at its tip once. This is where I use a combination of knives because rolling cut into this is going to be tough to not cut into the next piece. So the first one, I'll use a pulling cut with this trim knife or clicker knife or whatever you want to call it. And then my welt, which in this case is 10 or 11 mils wide, I trace that around and do a quick trim job. I leave a lot of extra because I end up trimming that off. And that ends up being my welt for one side. I've got a lot of extra here, so I can trim that off. Now I grab my push knife. Boom. And roll that for the end. Boom. So that piece is now cut. That's a front or a back, depending on what I'm making. And then this is, again, my welt. So you can see how little I'm wasting now by doing it this way. Just little scraps come off. And if they're over 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, I use that and stamp those out. And I'll show that on a different tutorial later. So now I've got this piece cut out and I've got the welt for it. It's already all set. So again, this is a Fields made knife. This is actually a clicker knife that just you can buy disposable blades for. You can also buy from Joshua Fields his Fields made clicker knife, which you can resharpen, and it's wonderful. It comes in a couple of different types. You can see that one's a slightly different curve than that. Or you can start looking for head knives. Now these can get expensive, but keep your eyes open on the secondary market for something like a Gumph, G-O-M-P-H. That's a great name. An old C.S. Osborne is a great name. And some of the older head knives that you can find that have high carbon steel, and you'll have to learn how to sharpen them, which I should do another tutorial on down the road. But you're seeing how I do my cuts. It makes a lot of sense to have a stand-up table to do this for if you have the room for it, and cut this out, and you can get a lot of good results. Well, all right, that's it for this one-take tutorial. I will see you guys later, and check out www.diamedesindustries.com for these knives. That's Joshua Fields at Fields Made, F-I-E-L-D-S, Fields Made, and he's in Weatherford, Texas. So I think you can find him on Facebook and a couple of different things, and if I find the link, I'll put it into the description of this video below. All right, have a good day, you guys. www.diamedesindustries, D-I-O-M-E-D-E-S, industries.com.